If you're my age and you're into movies, odds are you would say that one of the greatest films that you saw as a kid was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. When released in the early 1970s, this film was a beloved classic, and in particular, Gene Wilder. And so in this video, not only am I going to argue that Gene Wilder was absolutely the very best Willy Wonka out of all of them, better than Johnny Depp.
I cannot understand a single word you're saying.
I'm also going to argue that the movie, though made for kids, is much more along the lines of a horror film. When Tim Burton released Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Johnny Depp as Willy Wonka, I sat there in the theaters angry. I hated Johnny Depp's performance as Willy Wonka. The Willy Wonka that Gene Wilder portrayed was scary. And the factory, as they portrayed it, was scary.
Up the airy mountain, down the rushing glen.
What makes Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory just so damn scary? Number one, the streets of the town. The streets of where the movie took place aren't brightly lit. In fact, they look dark, they look cloudy, they look rainy. Right from the beginning of the movie, right after this colorful scene in a candy store that's so happy, the film twists and shows you a boy who's broke, who needs a day job. He can't afford candy like these other happy kids, and he has a job with grown-ups where he walks the streets and delivers newspapers. He has a sad life where his mother works for pennies in a laundromat cleaning clothes in a house that looks so small, a one-room house. And I know that was written in the book, but the depiction of it is depressing. Even Charlie walking the streets as a paperboy alone, not feeling that he can go into the candy store because he's just not wealthy enough, not comfortable enough. Even though the Candyman is throwing candy everywhere around the store, you would have thought that Charlie could have gone in and picked up a piece of candy or had joy for a minute, but he didn't. He just looks through the window. And even as he's on his way home from the paper route, as he looks through the gates of what looks like a dark, dingy, scary factory. This is a factory that's supposed to make fun candy and chocolate. It looks scary as hell with the words Wonka lighting up on a smokestack. And immediately, a man shows up with a rhyme out of nowhere, a cryptic puzzle. Number two, when the Willy Wonka does open his factories to 5 lucky golden ticket holders, the movie doesn't just depict kids running out and buying candy. There's a craziness to it. And when the golden tickets start going for sale and the world goes crazy to buy one, forget about all the kids, the characters we already know. You have a woman whose husband gets kidnapped for her case of Wonka bars and she's not willing to make the deal. You've got an auction where the queen herself bids the last case of chocolate bars. You've got a computer that says he knows where the chocolate is and yet refuses to give up the information. This goes completely against a children's movie of a bunch of kids trying to find a chocolate bar. And somehow in the middle of all of this, Charlie is supposed to live an adult life, taking care of 4 grandparents, impoverished, dark, rainy streets. And if it teaches you anything, it's that Charlie has a hope and a light inside of him just waiting to come out. But let's get to the next scary part. Slugworth. No offense, but Slugworth looks like he used to work in Germany in World War II. Ultimately, we now know is at the end works for Wonka, which is weird in itself that Wonka would do that. But he seems to show up everywhere. And when he whispers in their ear, each of the first 4 kids, though we don't know it, we hear an ominous piece of music. So when Charlie finds his ticket and Slugworth runs right into him, we now know what it's about. Everything about Slugworth is scary. And remember, folks, this is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which leads me to the next thing. Fizzy lifting drinks. Again, it's not in the book, but what was the point of the writers to write in a scene where by having a sip of fizzy lifting drinks, you start to levitate and fly. First of all, it's a little out of character for Charlie and his grandpa, but okay, and he immediately gives it to Charlie, which is a little bit of a stretch. And at first they start having fun and they're going up and up and up. But one of the most terrifying things as a kid was there's a fan and they're moving towards the fan where they're going to be chopped up into a million pieces. The sterilized ceiling where there's nothing to grab onto doesn't help. Now as an adult, I think about it and go, Grandpa, why the hell did you steal that drink? Why would you take that risk? Next, Hasawakano, which is backwards for Wonka wash. Out of nowhere, he puts them in this indoor crazy vehicle and then douses them for no reason with all kinds of foam and liquid and milk and cream and ridiculousness, only for them to go through what looks like a squeezer to suddenly that they're dry. That's terrifying. Next, Augustus Gloop stuck in the tube is part of the story, but the way they've depicted it with his head squeezing through that tube and pressure building behind him, it's the first time you see real peril and realize that this is not an enjoyable tour. This is going to be a funhouse from hell. Next, of course, is the boat through the tunnel. What starts off as a pleasant ride through a little chocolate world becomes a nightmare. When they show that shot of the chicken getting its head cut off and what looks like worms, the filmmakers are absolutely telling you that this is not going to be a fun ride. Whereas the tour that Tim Burton does in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is fun. The tour in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is a tour from hell. And I guess I should have known it from the start when he makes them sign a contract just to enter. And the contract has writing so small that it's illegible. Talk about enter at your own risk. Everything in this movie that Willy Wonka does is done with a moment of, are these people going to be okay? Going into that crazy room which suddenly they're crammed into and they can't find the door and they're struggling and screaming only to be let out into a crazy room that's shrinking. And I guess you knew something was up even before the contract. When Willy Wonka comes out with a limp, only to then do a somersault and be fine, as if to say, I'm going to be messing with you for a long time. Next, the everlasting gobstoppers. It's not just that when they start the machine, it's crazy in all of its colors and moving pieces. It's not that it looks so odd that it almost looks like something you can't put in your mouth, that it's a test that Willy Wonka has put them up to using a guy who looks like he's out of World War II Germany to test them. Which leads me to the performance of Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka. What Gene Wilder did, weirdly, oddly, matches all the scary things I've said before it. Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka is not a nice man. In fact, you spend the entire movie wondering why he's not enjoying giving this tour. Even when they finally do walk into the big chocolate room with the chocolate waterfall, where everything in there, every plant, every rose is edible, eatable. You can eat it. It's candy. And he starts singing Pure Imagination on the steps. Such a beautiful moment. Do you remember that he almost swacks the kids with his cane multiple times just trying to go down the stairs? How many times have you followed your teacher or your mother and tried to get ahead of them and they pulled you back? It's an aggressive movement. In the middle of this beautiful Pure Imagination song, Gene Wilder is constantly on the edge of, is he a nice guy or is he a bad guy? Next, he's so dismissive of any questions. Anytime somebody asks him a question, at one time he says, oh, I'm a little deaf in this ear. Ask me again in this ear next time. What? Additionally, every time a child was in peril, he really didn't seem to care. When Augustus Gloop was stuck in the pipe and everyone's concerned for him, he just gets out a piece of candy and just starts watching it as if it's a television show. But interestingly enough, he was concerned when the kid was sticking his hands in the chocolate. That got him upset. But once he was in the pipe and almost going to die, Willie didn't care anymore. He sat back and watched it. And each when the three remaining bad guy kids, one at a time, Veruca Salt, Violet Beauregard, and Mike TV, when all three of them eventually did sort of break the rules, Willy Wonka would only say mildly, "Stop, don't do it."
Stop, don't come back.
But he wouldn't really be forceful. It's almost like he wanted them to fall on their sword. So when Violet Beauregard grabs the gum,
Told you I hadn't got it quite right yet.
he knows it's a problem, but he lets her. And even when Veruca Salt goes down the garbage chute and he says there's going to be a lot of garbage and the father's concerned, the only thing that Willy Wonka could say is, well, maybe today is the day we don't incinerate the garbage so she has a chance to live. Really? And it's because of this that the movie works beyond a children's movie. It's the reason that the movie got under our skin. And when Willy Wonka gets down to the final two, Charlie and Grandpa Joe, and rudely shows them the exit, doesn't hardly even have an honest, heartfelt goodbye, and snubs them walking into his office, it makes complete sense that Willy Wonka would be so rude. He's such a businessman that of course he would hire a Slugworth. Of course he would make them sign a contract. This entire thing has nothing to do with the joy of candy. But not until Charlie and Grandpa Joe go in to talk to Willy Wonka, and he won't even recognize their presence in the room, yelling at them, telling them that they broke the contract. And what's great in Gene Wilder's performance is that he does such a turn-on-a-dime change. He's amazing as Willy Wonka in one moment of the film. He's scary as Willy Wonka in the other part of the film. He's angry as Willy Wonka towards the end of the film, as we see him ignore Grandpa Joe and Charlie when Charlie leaves the everlasting gobstopper on the table as a way to say, don't worry, I'm going to keep your secret. Slugworth will not get that everlasting gobstopper from me. Only then does Willy Wonka then turn on a dime again, now being the Willy Wonka that we've waited for since the beginning of the movie. The Willy Wonka that the Candyman set up in the beginning when he sang a song called The Candyman. That's not the Willy Wonka we've seen the entire movie. It took us until the very last moment when the elevator breaks through a ceiling. Again, another scary as heck moment because he doesn't tell them they're going to burst through the glass. If anything, he keeps telling them he's never done this before. He's never touched that button before. He doesn't know it's going to happen, but it's made of glass and tells him to hang on. The movie makes so many zigs from joy to zags to fear, both in scenery and new story plots, that of course the movie made an impression. To remake Willy Wonka again with that type of edge can't be done. Now, the final thing I'll say is this. When the movie came out in the early 70s, it didn't have the benefit of special effects the way that, say, Tim Burton's movie did, where Tim Burton could take one man and clone him to make them all look like the same Oompa Loompa. In Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, they had to hire a platoon of little people like Munchkins from The Wizard of Oz to dress them all up similarly and have them do their dance, but the dances were downright frightening. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you got any, and I hope you subscribe and we'll get some more stuff.